This is the Team Objection Podcast for May 9th, 2023, episode 575. I sound like trash because my allergies went haywire. We're just going to get it out of the way early. But I want people to understand our hustle, loyalty, and respect for the game because Game 5 is happening right now between Suns and Nuggets, but we're here, live, as always, because it needed to be done.
I don't want to be here.
I'm gonna Eric Bledsoe this. I don't want to be here.
Not Eric Bledsoe. God. So we have a few things to talk about. We'll talk about the Suns a little bit. Some of it will be off and on. It's going to be weird talking about the game because we're not necessarily watching it at the moment, but it'll be kind of a backdrop for what's going on. We should probably talk about Devin Booker's ascension into heaven. That would be cool.
The godlike creature that he is now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Are we doing that right now, or are we going to get to it eventually?
Now's as good time as any.
So, the most fun thing about this is that not everyone, but a lot of the national media who have said, I don't know about this Booker, he does all right, but he's not going to ever be are just eating their words. Like Bill Simmons, Stephen A. Smith, all these guys out there that generally, I know their opinions don't matter, but people listen to them, so they do in a way. How much they're just showering him with praise when they're saying these are some of the best shooting stats since MJ, and it's like, whew, okay, you're throwing that out there now, huh? That's nice.
Yeah, it's rarefied air, but I also have to be honest, I kind of resent the fact that the national conversation is finally coming around. I should be happy. I should be like, all right, cool, finally getting some recognition. But I mean, you even saw some pushback from Kevin Ray today, for example. On it's now Devin Booker's finally becoming a star, and it's like, no, bitch. No, he was always a star. He's on a different level this playoffs, to be clear. I can understand the point, but at the same time, I'm like, guys, just because he doesn't play in LA or New York and you missed it doesn't mean that it's news now.
But what's weird, though, is that people like Kevin Durant, for example, played in freaking Oklahoma City. He became a star in Oklahoma City doing great things. It's just insane to me that Booker, because he played with Dragon Bender and Marquise Chris and Jimmer Fredette, and, well, how come he can't drag that team to the playoffs as a 21-year-old? I wonder why, when Luka can't even make the playoffs with Kyrie Irving on his team. Never mind. I went off topic.
Ouch.
Yeah, I mean, he's completely changing the narrative. I hate Tim Bontemps. I hate a lot of people. He's one of them that I hate. And Booker alone, he's been so down on the Suns. Every time somebody brings up the Suns, he's so quick to chime in about how we stand no chance. We have no depth. This series is over. But hell, according to him, we shouldn't even made this series. It was a miracle we've even made it this far. And even he is like, I don't know. I can't count them out. Denver's probably going to win, but I can't say anymore because Book has been so prolific. He always gives you a shot. And if you can change that guy's mind, that means you're on quite a heater.
I mean, you just can't deny it when you're shooting 80% from the field every single game. What are you going to do? You can't say yeah, he's getting lucky this time. Oh, really? Lucky for 9 games in a row? That's enough.
He's 80% in this game so far. He's the only player we're playing worth a damn for the Suns at the moment. Well, Ayton's okay. Butterfingers as usual, but he just missed his last shot. But now he's 4 for 5. That's 80%. 80%, but Durant's 1 for 5, so that's part of why we're losing.
And we're down by 15 in the first quarter. So that's
all right. Durant just hit his first shot. It's okay. It's going to be all right. We're going to get through this.
Great.
But yeah, I think to Chris's point, it's nice hearing people praise. I like hearing positive feedback, but also we've known how special this guy is forever. We've known how important this guy is to this team and how we would not give him up for anybody in the league. And it'll continue that way.
I know a lot of people are like, well, it's thanks to Kevin Durant. And I think in part, yes, definitely. The gravity that he commands it makes a big difference. But it also goes to show you how much of his career being the sole focus on offense has been a factor and an obstacle. And all of a sudden, when he has one other prolific player, now granted, Kevin Durant is extremely good. But still, you see what these other teams with 2 stars get to enjoy all the time. It's really nice.
Isn't it kind of crazy how Booker played his first 5 years in the league, 6 years in the league, basically saying well, if Booker isn't amazing tonight, we have no shot at winning. And now we're kind of almost in that same boat right now where if Booker isn't amazing, we can't win. But the difference is we weren't beating, the 10 and 50 Kings versus the, second round of the NBA playoffs. So it's a little bit of a different situation.
Gotta make a work call. Carry the show. Carry it for me.
I mean, Booker, if you look at this matchup with Denver, we really should not stand any chance. We have a team. We made a big trade in Kevin Durant, so we have a big 2. This roster is not constructed with that trade in mind, though. This was made on the last day of the trade deadline, so we don't have the pieces that you would want around a Booker and Durant duo. Like, we just don't. It cost a lot, and then we weren't able to fill in the gaps. We weren't really able to take advantage of, the ring chasers coming to sign with us. We had a small window there. So we really have no bit, and 15 games or something ahead of this that we played together.
Durant's had 9 games in the playoffs and 8 games in the regular season that we played.
And those 8 games in the regular season were interrupted, and it was against kind of trash. So that is one criticism that we've taken of the Suns didn't really play anybody good or at full strength. It's true. We still looked good, and we thought maybe it was a little bit of fool's gold because Durant looked awesome, and we're saying, okay, well, against a good team, it turns out chemistry does matter. We have no business in these series. They had to go nuclear to keep us in it, and they are.
But when your team is designed that way for them to go nuclear, I think game 1 and 2 of the Denver series has been the biggest problem where it looked like our teammates were afraid to shoot. And something happened in those few days in between 2 and 3 where maybe it's because Kogi isn't playing as much and Craig isn't playing as much, where we said, look, guys, we're going to win this game in offense because both offenses are excellent. And so we need to keep up the pace on offense. And so we put in, Shamet had a great game, obviously, but we put in players like TJ Warren and Terrence Ross, who are not afraid to shoot at all. They're offensive players. They're going to shoot. And even if they aren't making shots, the respect they command allow Booker and Durant to go in places like they are. So I think that's last week we talked about how we were down on Monty and how, man, I don't know if he can make it past the season if we get knocked out. Well, he made the adjustment and went against his beliefs in a way because they aren't as good defensively, and it's paying off.
If there's only one criticism now, I think he's out of the hot seat if he was ever in it really to begin with, but he made the adjustment. I wish that it did not take this to actually play our bench because they've been good in the last couple games. Could have been even better, but it's hard to get into that rhythm when you don't know where your playing time is going to come, how much it's going to be when you get in, who you're going to be playing with. That's all hard. And so credits him for finally making that adjustment. I wish he had done it sooner because it would be paying dividends, but at least he did it. A lot of coaches, they're so stuck in their ways. They're like, this is our squad. This is what we're going to run with. So
I'll give him credit for that for sure, because he could have not changed it and we could have gotten swept and that would have been that. It is frustrating that it took until after game 2 to figure that out because the problems were evident in game 1, yet we lost a very winnable game in game 2, which is a very different situation right now.
Yeah. How are you feeling about the Ayton pitchforks? Because I was full on trade Ayton. As time went on, I heard a little bit more about he did have a temper tantrum. Yes, he was a little bitch, but he got through it. He started cheering for his teammates. He started being more engaged with the team, even at the end of that game. And that, to me, was a little bit better. But, I mean, he's just playing really bad. And what I don't understand is when I play bad and I'm not, something's not clicking on offense or maybe I'm forcing it too much, I can take a step back and just be like, okay, I'm just going to hustle and play D and rebound. And then, sometimes the rhythm can just come from that. Even if it doesn't, though, at least I'm contributing. It doesn't feel like that happens with Ayton. And it's like if I'm playing bad, I'm just going to unengage and I'm going to make mental lapses and I'm not going to try. And
I feel like he has the problem that happens to a lot of people in their own jobs is you make a mistake, then you compound that mistake by continuing to question whether what you're doing is right, and then you're thinking, and then you not have the proper reaction time, and then you get caught out, and then it looks worse because you're thinking and then not just reacting, getting the flow. Um, I I can see that in his play where he's kind of like questioning whether he should do something. He's like hesitant in things. And that hesitation is the difference in the NBA. You can't hesitate. You just have to go. There's no.
You're totally right. But that's that's on offense. These are offensive problems, and again, number one pick, the guy who is making a big deal about getting the max contract, and he's like, I deserve it, blah blah blah. Well, I expect you to overcome these issues on offense, right? But to me, the biggest issue is the rebounding, the hustle, the defense. That's where I want him to be so much better. I could live with a tremendous force that just is in his head about offense right now, but he's been bad. At best, he's been mediocre in every facet of the game. At absolute best.
Which game 4, I felt he was that. He had such similar stats game 3 to game 4, but you could feel it so much differently in game 4. The hustle was there so much more in game 4, I think, for him. So it was interesting seeing that difference.
And it sounds weird to say this about a guy guarding somebody who put up a 53 piece, but his defense wasn't terrible. Because the whole point is to let him fight one-on-one and not to help and double and let Jokic pick you apart with passing. So it made sense, but you still can't be like, well, he locked Jokic down. Obviously, that's not true. But he battled, and that's about all you can ask for. Because my expectations have been lowered. So I'm like, well, if I get adequate basketball, I guess that's better than what I expect at this point.
What it comes down to is I don't know that this season, at least, we can win without him being what he can be necessarily. He didn't have to be 100%, but he has to be more than what he was in order for us to win. Because Jock Londale, yeah, great, he's hustling. Even Jock Londale hustling 100% isn't what Ayton can do.
This might be, I don't know if this is a hot take or not. I feel like he has not contributed. I feel like he's actually been a detriment overall, and especially in this series. I think the plus minus is not a perfect stat. I think it really does, for the most part, tell the story here. He's like minus 15 or something for this series. And Landale is like a plus 12. That one I don't think tells the whole story either, but
it tells
part of the story.
It tells a story. You can't tell the whole story with it. No stat is, immune from being a little bit corrupted at times or swayed or, small sample sizes or whatever, but it matches the eye test. And when the stats align with the eye test, you got to give them some credence. Plus minus is deeply flawed at times, but it sort of represents the dynamic here between the two of them. And I get a little bit of this is going to be some racial stuff. I hate to say it. I've seen the depths of Twitter. And that's the case with Ayton in general. Now it's a white guy who's playing well, so oh boy, replace the black guy with the white guy. But the fact remains that Landale's been busting his ass and has deserved more minutes, and Ayton did not, especially as of his pout fest.
And, I don't buy that either, because the truth is, Biyombo, when he plays, he's not perfect for this series because he gives up a little too much height, and there's also no offense. But he hustles. Like, you never question, is Biyombo hustling? Is he trying? You just don't get it from Ayton, and I don't know what. I don't even want to say it anymore because we've been saying it for fucking 5 years now. It's over. He's not going to be that player ever. The only way he can work is if I think you funnel the entire offense through him, you live with whatever shots you get, and he's going to be a finesse player that can sometimes put up a 30-15 game.
So that when you talk about what we do in the future, I don't know that I want to go down the future line, but you're not going to be able to trade him for much of anything. So I think you just have to work with what you have for the time being, and that's the best you can do because you're not going to get anything back, and you're going to get nothing of value back. So I just don't see it.
You'll get something of value. I mean, the idea that if Russell Westbrook is tradable, if like we've seen every player we thought had too onerous of a contract or was too flawed in some way has been dealt and in some cases gotten a better return than expected. So like I wouldn't rule that out if they really want to explore that market. I think you find a taker for a guy his age with his skill set. Yes, it's not going to be what it would have been after the finals run. There's no doubt about that. But the idea that it's like, well, we're stuck with him, I don't think that's the case. And I think you can move him for somebody comparable if you really like their fit with Durant and Booker better.
Yeah, exactly. And just the I'm not in the locker room. I don't know. I see them yelling at Ayton constantly, though. And so there's a frustration there. There's a chemistry thing there. And again, like in some small ways, if it's addition by subtraction, I'm not being crazy. I know at times he can be a great talent. He can anchor the defense. He can board for us. But he comes with a lot of headache that, when you're a number one pick, as a fan, you wish were not the case.
I kind of touched on this last week, but I'm starting to really pin down exactly what it is. And it's not hustle exactly. It's when he is uncertain, he just kind of stands around not knowing what to do, which is in and of itself not hustling, because for some players, they'll just throw themselves at something and figure it out, right? But that's where he has problems, is where he just has doubts, and he doesn't know, okay, what should I do in this position? When you run something to him, like he's pretty automatic on those little like 10-foot righty kind of half hook shots, right? When he just catches it in rhythm and doesn't bobble it and just puts it up without hesitation, I'd say he's probably like 70% on those. But there's asterisks on that make it a lot more difficult and then also frustrating to watch as a fan.
I just want to point out to Sean really quickly that that's almost exactly what I said while you were gone, Chris, about doubts and confidence. So Thank you, Chris, for validating that.
Yeah, it was good.
I was going to try not to repeat anything, but I didn't know what was said.
No, that's fine. But you just validated me over Sean, which is just fantastic.
Well,
you're both
really.
What are you
right.
talking about?
It's not that like he has a good motor when he knows how to apply himself, but too often he doesn't know what to do, which is odd. I know he was a little bit late to basketball, but not like Joel Embiid late. So I don't really understand this uncertainty, especially when they're not asking him to do massive things on the offensive end. If it was running the offense through him and he was lost at times, I'd be like, well, I mean, growing pains, but his role is pretty defined, so it doesn't make much sense.
And the motor thing, this is the point I made to Dave, is like on offense, I get it. On defense, at the end of the day, if there's nothing else, there's you have to switch in certain ways and be the backside in certain plays. It's hustle and rebounding, though. So much of it, moving your feet, staying in front of your guy. That's what kills me with him. And he's not like a gym rat. We know this. He said it. The team knows it. He's not the first one in the gym, last one gone. And so for things like, I can't seem to catch passes ever. Maybe could use more reps, but he's like, no, I'm good. I got my second payday. I'm good. I'm good to go play video games. And maybe I'm being hypercritical, but if I would kill to have any sort of opportunity, I would put whatever sort of work in. So I don't know.
I think to an extent, a little bit of it is like, I don't know how much reps help. At a certain point, it might just be like Alex Len 2.0, where like his hands are just stone and he can't catch things properly. I think reps help. Don't get me wrong. I think it would be a boost. But it might just be that as good as his footwork and touch around the rim is, that catching passes is not one of his skills. I mean, we saw Alex Len getting playoff minutes for the Kings this year. And I was like, oh, wow, I haven't watched Alex Len play in a few years because why would I? And it's like, he's pretty much the same guy. Now they're limiting him in his role to like 10 minutes a game, and he does well what he does. But it's like, he gets a pass from like De'Aaron Fox on a bounce pass in the pick and roll, and it bounces off his arm. And I'm like, he's that guy still. He's been in the league 10 years, and he's that guy still. So, I mean, it might just be a lost cause. I don't know.
Yeah, and then I guess the other piece is Durant. He has played one good game this series so far.
But something I want to say, though, about Durant is, his shooting has been suspect, and it's not what you expected when you got him. But like good players do, he figured out other ways to affect the game, and that's what that's what you hope and wish Ayton would do.
Yeah.
In that
he's been our best defender in this series.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Booker maybe has been. I automatically write him off as just being good, but when you look at the metrics, he's in elite company this postseason as a defender. But let's just say, especially given the effort relative, I think Durant has been making up for it on the defensive end by playing his ass off on that side.
I will say shooting has been suspect. Turnovers has been suspect. Yeah. Both very bad. But yes, when his shooting was bad, he started taking it to the hole. So I think he scored like 39 points on like horrible shooting.
Because he had all of our free throws.
Yeah.
And I will say, I don't mind this as much. I told this to Sean when we were watching Game 4. It's like, I don't mind the turnovers as much now. I still hate them, obviously. But when they're running all the offense through Booker and Durant and Paul's hurt, at least now I'm like, okay, they each had 5 turnovers in Game 4. I get it. Because 90% of the offense is being facilitated by them. But he was having those games when Paul was healthy, and that was where you're like, what are we seeing here? Because this is usually captain efficiency.
And so much like I mean, as much as you can, I guess turnovers are always bad, but you'll see some turnovers from Book, and you're like, oh, like I see the play he was trying to make, or like, oh, I had the player close out a little bit better or come to the ball a little bit more. Maybe it's not a turnover. Durant is just like, oh, I just dribbled the ball, I lost the ball, and you're like, what are you doing? Yeah. So that kills me a little bit when it happens 7 times in a game.
I like that Sean has been so hypercritical of the fact that we won our first round series 5-1, 4-1. We're tied in 2-2 right now in a very competitive series in which we have an absolutely good chance of winning, and Sean has been nothing but hypercritical.
Well, it's critical when like Booker has exceeded expectations by a lot. I mean, and everyone else, you can say Landry Shamet had the game that certainly exceeded expectations, but like no one else has played on the team. I would almost argue maybe Lando, maybe whatever, TJ Warren for 3 minutes that he's in. Kevin Durant has not played to his expectation. DeAndre Ayton, Okogie, Craig, like where did our team go? So that's been a little bit frustrating for sure. And because this reminds me of the fucking Dallas series where you're like, yeah, as long as we play like normal, we're going to be fine. And then no one played normal or showed up. And you're like, how does this keep happening to this team? But it's probably an NBA thing. Like give Denver credit. I'm sure they're taking certain things away and all of that. It just, the eye test is like, what happened to us?
It's a sign of, though, how good things can be right now, I think, because, yeah, we haven't gelled. We haven't played that well. And yet we're tied 2-2 in the second round.
I know. And to this point, I was thinking before this game, Denver has not really impressed me except one game so far. And I mean, maybe this game when they blow us out, that'll be 2 games. But like Jokic has been crazy. As a team, they have only impressed me one time. Like
one really.
I don't think they're that good. The question is, are we going to be able to put enough together to win this series quick enough? Maybe not. Maybe it's over in 6 games. Thank God at least we tied it up though.
And I talked to somebody last week who was a little bit confused by last week's show because they were like, have you just kind of written them off? And it's like, no, nor are we over the moon about where we're at now, having leveled the series at 2-2, because it's a very different place than we were last week, right? But I think Sean and I both said this after Game 4, at least we looked like ourselves again, because losing Game 7 against Dallas would have been sad no matter what, because fuck Luka Doncic, right? But if we had run some semblance of our offense and lost by 5 points, sure, it would have been more excruciating in ways, but at least we would have walked away going, well, we weren't good enough. We weren't good enough in that Game 7, but we weren't even, like, mediocre enough. We were trash from top to bottom. So that was almost more frustrating. The same was kind of true here. The first 2 games in Denver, other than Devin Booker looking really good, the rest of the team struggled. And we got contributions in Game 4 from a few different players, and that was enough to be like, all right, at least we've made our stamp. We kind of put our effect on this series. So if it doesn't go our way, we didn't get swept. We didn't get embarrassed. Like, we're in this. We can still absolutely win this series and the title, but at least now we weren't embarrassed. That's all I care about.
Yeah, and, as much as, people at this time, there's no moral victories or, like, the only narrative is winning, like, I don't really buy that. And I think if we look at this and say, look what we did, even if we don't win another game this series, and we say, look at what Devin Booker's capable of, look at what this offense can do with very little time put together, like, our future's very bright. And that still means something.
It means something, especially for the future, too, when Chris Paul hasn't been a part of it.
No, yeah, exactly. That's actually a great point, is like you get a little bit less worried about how are they going to fill that gap. It's like, what gap?
I feel like Chris Paul on the team is still helpful in the regular season. I don't know what to make of him because he is still a very high IQ player, knows how to manipulate the offenses and see the floor. But the things that we need, I feel like he's been too stubborn to do, which is run. Yeah. We need to run.
I don't know if he'll probably always start. So maybe that's the wrong thing to say. I don't know if he's going to continue to be the best version of himself as the point guard that plays the most minutes. So if he's going to start, fine, but like he's playing 15 to 20 minutes a game and he's in there to help be a closer when it makes sense, if he's feeling it that night.
Depending on what happens at the end of this season, how this season ends and what happens with him as this season ends, whether he plays again or not. we're gonna have some real tough questions in this offseason.
We are, because I see him as more of a role player going forward. I
But
hope
there's
I'm
no
wrong,
way
but that's what I see. And you're just like, well, that's a lot of money for.
we can all we can do is I mean, we can try to trade him. It's gonna be tough to do. Cut him, or say, yep, we're rolling with him again. Those are our options, really. Like we can't see it can't be like, well, we'll see how it goes
Half his
because there is
contract is
no.
guaranteed, but I have to admit, I'm also not really interested in an off-season conversation right now.
No, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
Because
Well,
the season's
you know
not
what?
over.
You're right,
Nope.
but
I think the original point about how, again, it does ease the concerns about what
Yeah.
this might look like in a post-Paul landscape, but the specifics don't matter. We might be playing in 4 weeks still. Paul might be back to play in that scenario. And I do think what we saw in very limited, because the overlap of Booker, Paul, and Durant all playing together is even smaller than that 18 games that keeps getting floated out. But one thing he was smart about doing is New Orleans Chris Paul is dead, never coming back. But he was at least starting to outlet it to somebody else to push the tempo on the fast break a bit. So even though he's not going to be the one pushing it up the middle of the floor and kicking it out, he was at least smart about like, all right, there's Booker up there. I'm going to throw it to him. Let him create. If he can't, we'll set something up in the half court.
exactly, yeah.
So I think there's still some merit to it. His defense is still okay, even though he's always been undersized, and now he's starting to lose a little bit of the physical capabilities. I don't know. I don't really expect him back this playoff run, whether we continue or not. I mean, a 38-year-old with a groin injury feels like a recipe for disaster, but
I would have thought done, like Dunzo, but you keep hearing like, maybe even this series.
know,
and I'm
but
like, I don't understand how
they've
that's
done
possible.
that with him every other time he's been hurt, so that's why I don't really buy into it. Maybe it is true this time, but we've seen 3 other day-to-day injuries that resulted in weeks of missed time.
Yeah.
So we're kind of like the Clippers in that regard, but only with Chris Paul. Everybody else were like pretty accurate about the injury timetable, and then on Chris Paul, we're like, yeah, he's day-to-day. He's actually month to month.
By the way, the Denver is playing blistering 3-point barrage. We're down by 3 points.
Yeah. That's why, I mean, I'm not...
So,
I think I'm sure fans are like, is it whiplash? Or are you guys just all over the place? No, I'm consistently kind of like even keel.
Yeah.
Because I believe in this team. At the very least, I think they're good enough to win it. I don't know if they're going to, but I know they're going to battle. They're good enough offensively to hang with anybody, and we'll see how it plays out.
Dave, this was a very interesting thing. So I've talked to you before about like I get previously so stressed when we lose, and so like almost apathetic when we win. Like, yeah, good. I'm glad we should have won, and then there's not a lot of joy. Since kind of calming down, it still stings when we lose, but it's like, oh, it's okay. There's other things to enjoy. It's fine. And then when we win, I'm actually like, oh, I can kind of like bask in this and enjoy it a little bit. And it's been very nice.
It's been so much of how we play. It depends on my mood after a loss. Like the game 1 against the Clippers, I felt like I was so mad because we didn't play how we should, and yet we only lost by 3 points. Game 1 of the Nuggets series, I'm like, Nuggets played really well. I wasn't feeling that bad. Game 2, I was kind of mad. I'm like, look, we had this game and had this opportunity.
That one, 87 points. Denver doesn't break 100 and we lose. That was rough.
That was the one where I was mad. Game 1, I wasn't so mad about. Game 2, I was real mad about, which has probably led to the tone of our show that next day.
But you know what? I'm sort of with you in the sense that I don't mind losing when we get outplayed, which is why the finals didn't hurt me that badly. Even though we were close, and yes, a couple crucial plays changed the outcome. And obviously, we've said to death about how we just want to win one title before we all die. But I wasn't that upset because it felt like the better team won. Like they made plays down the stretch and we didn't, so we didn't deserve to win that title. That was not the case in other playoff losses, and those are the ones I walk away from like, man, like if we have a chance to prove it on the court and we don't, that's on us and I can live with that. It's when either we suck or the league fucks us.
Yeah.
Those are the two I struggle with because I'm like, we didn't get a chance to show what we could do.
Yep. Exactly. No, it's so true. And what's been good, I mean, so far in this playoff run is really we've had, if we get beat for the most part, it's because we didn't play as well as we could, but it wasn't like we sucked and something came out of left field.
I actually don't want to talk about the Ishbia shove because
I thought about bringing it up.
Every take I've heard of the game is, Booker going nuclear, Jokic like also playing great, but we gotta dedicate half of our segment to the. And it's like it just like doesn't matter.
It shows
he didn't get suspended. He shouldn't have. let's move on.
It shows you how much of a fiend for drama this league is. It's why the trade deadline is so explosive every year. It's why the offseason somehow has drama. Everybody loves this shit. It's a soap opera for men, and it was never more clear than that, where it was like, Matt Ishbia did nothing wrong. Nikola Jokic did nothing wrong. I'm like, both those guys screwed up, and neither needed to be punished more than they were. You can argue that Denver lost a point because of it, and I'm like, yeah, but Jokic walked across the court to insert himself into somebody he didn't need to be involved in. And Ishbia shouldn't be holding on to the ball either. Like, both things can be true. But instead, it was all hot take merchants, and this guy did something totally wrong, and I can't believe the owner did this. And it was just, we texted in our thread, like I was going to bring it up for the show, and now I'm like, I don't care.
I saw a post from someone in Denver being like, Matt Ishbia should be suspended. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, not allowed in the arena? Is that what you mean by suspended? But he's not playing. What's that going to do?
My amazement to this comes from how many people, A, saw one clip of it from one angle and said, oh, I'm making my judgment off of this. Mm-hmm. And B, how many people do not understand the rules of basketball? Because I saw so many takes out there, so many awful takes of, oh, yeah, well, Jokic is trying to start the fast break and get a 5-on-4 advantage. Like, how do you think that? It was an out-of-bounds violation. Yeah. The referee has to start the play. Like, what?
People also have to understand, it's tied.
Tie game.
That as a Suns fan, this is important context. More fucked than I would say most teams have ever been fucked in their history with that walking on the court getting suspended. So we can be a little anal with the rules as written. Even with that said, I don't think he should have been suspended. I was not advocating for that, but I think that context is important. Suns fan being like, wait a minute.
Letter of the law.
Letter of the law. I seem to recall something a few years ago.
That law, that went through my head a lot where I'm like, look, we had it where nothing happened because of this incident, but the letter of the law says this. And, well, I mean, you got to stay consistent, right, NBA? That's kind of like... Overall, it was a pretty stupid situation that was escalated by everybody else around. But I don't know, man, there was a part of me that's like, yeah, he absolutely should be suspended.
I would not have been mad. I would not have been mad if he was suspended for that reason.
I wouldn't have been mad because it benefits us, but I wasn't advocating for it either. No, I'm with you guys. Like, we didn't want to see it then, and we don't want to see it now, and it doesn't make it right back in 2007 just because it would have happened here. And I will say, your point about the dead ball stuff was spot on because so many people were arguing that. And it was like, well, even if it was a dead ball, Jokic can give the ball to the ref and then inbound. And it's like, did you not see the play the night before in the Lakers game when LeBron was like 15 rows deep and they waited for him to get back on the court? It's actually a rule that in a dead ball situation, all 10 players have to be on the court.
Yeah.
So, like, you can argue from places of bad faith as easily as you want to, but don't be fucking stupid about it.
Yep. All
right, we ended up talking about it anyways, but I wanted to at least get that off my chest. It was. I mean, it shows you how many fucking casuals there are out there, and that's true of anything you support. But boy, basketball casuals are the worst.
But I love that our take was how bad all the takes were. That's a take I can live with on this one. Not actually talking about it ourselves, so that's good. All right, well, what else do we got?
Suns are down 2.
Yeah,
with free throws coming for Aaron Gordon, but it's fine. Because the Nuggets have 15 points in the second quarter, and that's kind of funny.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're playing better defense.
We have 24 and 24. That's not great, but we'll get there. The second half adjustments. Monty's known for his adjustments. We're going to get through this. I wanted to bring up a couple of things I saw in the news. One thing that was going viral over the last 24 hours was Mark Hamill getting shoved in his own vehicle by overzealous fans. And I don't think we're going to have anything like a unique take on this, but I was like, man, you are not going to find many kinder human beings on the planet than Mark Hamill. So of all celebrities, for people to get overzealous and try and demand autographs and stuff from, I'm like, him? Of all people, him?
So why did he get shoved? He got shoved because of what?
Like, people were reaching into the window of his car with merchandise they wanted him to sign, and I guess they clocked him upside the head with something.
Okay.
Yeah, what I read, he basically got, like, for lack of a better word, stabbed in the neck by a pen. And as the article I read said, he let out an audible groan, put up his window, and then drove away. I'm like, yeah, I don't blame the guy for that, like, at all.
It was more like, Aaron Gordon missed both free throws.
Yeah,
so
he's due. He's due.
So it was more like, an overzealous fan, rather than like maybe an angry fan who's like, oh, you're not going to sign this in attacks. It was like,
all overzealous.
Please. that makes a little more sense because Mark Hamill is a national treasure, maybe more than any national treasure that we have when you look at his career and what he is willing to do, and what a nice guy he is. It still is not good, and it makes me hate people. But
what I don't get, I think I've said this before on the show. I don't understand the idolization of celebrity culture. You can respect people, you can want to model certain behaviors after people, especially famous people because they're prevalent. But the idolization, oh my God, there's Mark Hamill in a car. This is my only opportunity to have my paper signed. I don't think it adds to your life to have had that thing happen because you were able to walk in and he signed something for you. I don't know how that adds to your life. If you have a conversation with him, it's different. I
don't understand. I shouldn't go Suns fans. Anna Kendrick. I love Anna Kendrick. If I saw her, more than anybody loves anyone. And if I saw her, I would never reach. I don't even know if I go talk to her. Period. But it would never reach the level of borderline assault because I am so adamant that she signed whatever it is. Yeah, people just get crazy.
Like I said, it doesn't add to your life. Now, if Anna Kendrick happened to sit next to you and you had a conversation with her, yeah, you'd want to take advantage of that situation because you have, you could actually add something.
I don't think I'm going to assault her still, though.
Exactly. No, you're not going to assault her, that's for sure.
But, I mean, my takeaway was that I had hoped that maybe people had learned something from the incident, because there was a bit of, commotion, I guess, when they realized that he might have been hurt by what was happening. You could hear a couple of different voices being like, are you all right? At that point, a couple of folks seemed to pull the arms out of the car and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And then I saw those items for sale online.
Yeah,
with the pictures of him getting hit in the neck as proof of see, this was signed at this moment. It's rare proof. And they're hiking up the price because of it. It's okay, so you're just an asshole. We're beyond redemption. Yeah. Okay, got it.
And I don't know why people would want to purchase that in that sense. I've never understood the collection culture either, but I guess I'm missing out on something.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually thinking one day I would love to have a Phoenix Suns room in the house. And I would love to get stuff from the different eras, especially the eras that I mostly care about, Steve Nash era and the current one. And that's about it. The Barkley era, sure, but I don't have as much personal connection. I would love to go buy that stuff. I'm not willing to spend thousands of dollars, maybe total, over the gathering of everything. But for one signed whatever, spending my life savings, I don't get it. But if you have money to burn and it's not really an issue for you, then I guess I can kind of see it then. It's all relative.
If it brings you joy, brings you value to your life, I guess I get it. It's just nothing that I've ever gone into. I can appreciate, like I said, what you can model your life after because of certain people's behaviors or whatever, but the shrine doesn't make sense to me. I mean,
guess. If there's a shoes that's selling for $75,000, yeah, I'm gonna be well, how could you justify that? But it's some billionaire where literally they will not feel it. Why not?
And even something more practical, there's, I saw a couple weeks ago somebody had every Super Nintendo and Super Famicom game ever made in the boxes. And it was wow, that's kind of cool. And if you wanted to, you could. They weren't the sealed variety, so it wasn't it was, oh my God, you can't play them. You could bust one out and play one if you wanted to. And I'm if I did that, they would just sit there. They would just sit there. It would be a thing that I collected. It would bring some value, I guess. I could be that's cool. I have this thing. I could show it to folks, but it would just sit there. So why would I devote that much time and effort and money to something that's just going to sit there? I respect for people who like that, but it's not me.
Now, Dave, here, I need your perspective. If someone were to buy, let's say, something like a $300 lightsaber, but they have it mounted on the wall so that they can take it off and still use it, do you think that that's a little more justifiable?
No, I think that person's a complete idiot.
Okay.
Interesting.
I'm glad you brought it up yourself because I was thinking about bringing it up.
Total
too.
hypothetical.
Yeah,
I was
some
just
stranger
curious.
we would have made
some weirdo. I don't know who this could possibly be in which I'm speaking, but yeah, some guy wearing an orange Phoenix Sun shirt would be a complete idiot.
Now I bought a Demon Slayer sword, but that's for home protection, so that's practical.
Yeah.
But the lightsaber not going to protect it. Well, actually, if I hit somebody with the base of that thing, that's actually pretty heavy.
I mean, if you cracked it over somebody's head and the glass shattered, that would do it, right?
I don't know. because it's kind of like it's not like fiberglass. I think it's just gonna like snap.
Is there like radioactive material inside that you could like burn their skin with?
Probably not.
Okay,
Probably
well-
not. But that's what the sword is for. I have the Demon Slayer sword, Zenitsu. Not for you guy. You don't know who he is, but maybe someone out there is like
Elsers.
Zenitsu. I know who that is.
Yeah. That's kind of it. It's going to be a shorter show this week. I sound like crap. We're going to watch the second half, although it's halftime now, so we have like 10 minutes still. But is there anything else that people wanted to talk about? I thought about bringing up the writer's strike. I don't have a lot to say about it until we see how it gets resolved.
Yeah,
it sucks.
The funny thing right now about the writer's strike has been the takes of people saying, "Oh, well, television. Here comes reality TV shows all the time." Like all the different sides trying to angle themselves has been really interesting. I think of like trying to get sympathy from people. So that's been an interesting thing. But I don't know. There's so many dynamics that go into this, and that it's tough to have an opinion on it without being in it on one side or the other.
Selfishly, I hope it doesn't affect Cobra Kai's last season.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Doug asked what color did it change. You would think he's talking about the lightsaber, but actually lightsabers don't change based on the user. He is talking about Demon Slayer. And the blade was white when I pulled it out of the sheath, amazingly. So it has little lightning bolts on it too. It's pretty cool. It's not sharp though, because I don't want to pull I feel like I've talked about this on the show before. Bodies, and Pete Davidson myself by stabbing myself on accident. I said the writer's strike sucks, and it makes it seem like I am not for it. I am. It sucks that we can't just pay writers, like that it takes this to give them what they're owed. And then you get some people, reportedly like James Corden, who are actually advocating to pay writers less. That guy's such a piece of shit.
And you do have to wonder about the timing of the ending of his
Yeah,
show.
you do.
Was it coincidence? Maybe.
I don't know if there's a guy... I'm sure there's a lot of candidates, but who made a career off of being like the nice, funny guy who was actually a bigger piece of shit than James Corden. But anyways, it just sucks that it's impacting a lot of shows that I care about, and I wish it didn't have to come to this.
And
last time writer's strike, it sucked. We got one of the worst James Bond movies. It was a disaster.
We got Dr. Horrible out of it, which isn't enough to offset the
yeah.
losses, but it was something. That's one takeaway. I can be like, hey, we got Who's Line renewed because of it, because they're like, hey, we don't have writers for that show. But it was almost all negative. And the other thing I'll say is, along your lines, like, it sucks with every industry. It's more visible with a writer's strike, but it sucks when rail workers have to go on strike to get what they should have gotten in the first place, or teachers or whomever. And that's why, I mean, I'm not necessarily going to be pro-union per se, but I get it, because it's like, if you need somebody to help back you when you're in these fights for basic human decency.
It just sucks because so often what they're striking for, you hear what they want, you're like, oh, it's not that much, or it's not that big of a deal. Why won't they just do it? And then they always do. And we're like, why did we do the strike?
And by the way,
like,
you hear what they ask for, and sometimes that's them trying to negotiate. So they're staking out a position even beyond what they would accept, which would still be a vast improvement. But sometimes even what they ask for isn't unreasonable. So you're like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
It's always proven of the most important thing is how replaceable are you? And if you're pretty easily replaceable, you have no negotiating standpoint, unfortunately, when it comes to this. And what we've seen in the previous writer's strike is that they may not be so replaceable in many ways. So that's going to be a different
good TV.
thing.
And we saw ChatGPT's not there yet. We talked about that a few weeks ago, so we can't replace him yet.
Man, you look at something like Andor, I'll bring up again, and you're like, oh, this is what Star Wars can be when there's a good writer. It's so much of that show, why it's good. It's not special effects. It's not the cinematography. The acting is good, but it boils down to the writing. And you're like, I wish we just had good writers. I would argue it's the most important thing on a good television show or movie. And it's just crazy that it has to come to this.
Because even actors, you can salvage mediocre material with good actors, but you can't bridge that gap. If it's terrible written material and like the best actor in the world is not going to be able to save it.
No, I mean, I love Pedro Pascal. Like Mandalorian season 3 was trash. Ted Lasso, I am hearing, I will give it a shot still, is not very good. And it's like, even sometimes good yeah, I don't know. It's good writing is so important.
I'm interested what you think of that when you watch it, because I've been watching it as it comes out, and I don't know why people are saying it's not.
Yeah,
I'm going to give it a shot.
I think some of those takes have been a little out there. And I know I like the show, so maybe I'm biased on it, but I think a few people are counterculturing this.
The problem that I've had from what I've heard on it, and I guess we might as well go here, right? We said if there's any other topic. Left. The issues that I'm hearing are the issues that I would have with it. So I'm still going to watch it. I haven't seen it. I've watched the first 2 episodes. First episode I thought was pretty weak. Second episode I thought was pretty good, actually.
About as good as anything in season 2.
Yeah. And from what I heard of where it goes and what the faults are, I was like, yeah, I would have a fault with that. Focusing too much on ancillary characters, having it like, do we still do soccer anymore on the show? Is that like a thing that happens anymore? That's a huge problem.
Never really
for me.
did, to be fair.
And like, what's that guy Zara, the crazy Zava. I was like, oh, I think this actually was brilliant to bring another character like this. Because they had this in like the Jamie Roy dynamic in season 1, and then they lost it. It turns out like that doesn't go anywhere either, really. So,
and it seemed like he was the perfect foil to Ted Lasso's, aw shucks, everybody get along demeanor, and it seems like he's going to be gone really quickly from what I've read.
I gotta be honest, it's not like anti-feminist or whatever. I do not give a shit about Keeley's PR firm in a show of Ted Lasso and like these core characters. Anime Dave does this a lot. They start with the core cast. You're like, oh, I love the show. Most anime then are like, you know what? We're going to see, remember that C tier character? He's going to get his own episode. He's going to get his own full arc now. I'm like, I don't care about this guy. Bring me back to the core that I wanted to. I watched the show to begin with.
What's funny is the only show that did that right was Orange is the New Black because the core character sucks so hard.
Sure. And it can happen. There are some anime that pull it off. There are some TV shows that do it really well.
When they pull it off, it's because they do a good job of incorporating those C tier characters into the main plot. Not because they focus so well on side stories. Usually.
At least
there are examples, but usually it's because, hey, we want this character to be more involved in what's going on. So bring him into the fold. Bring him into the main thing. Not what's going on adventure with them on the side.
At least Lost listened to their audience. I don't know if I've told this story. They introduced Paolo and some chick. I don't remember. And they're like, yeah, these 2 characters are going to be instrumental. And everyone hated them. And the writers, this is actually brilliant. They're like, fine, you all hate them? Fuck it then. And they killed off the characters, actually buried them alive in the show. And you're like, we gave them the worst fate. And as a viewer, you felt a little bit bad. You're like, oh, this is my fault. Anyways, I think when they lose focus and they try to become, and these like hour-long episodes of Ted Lasso.
Yeah, that's the part I'm not a big fan of. Because it just feels bloated. It doesn't feel like the extra length was warranted. We'll give a full review of season 3. We're going to be watching it probably coming up here. So, Dave, if you finish it, we should be able to get to it in an upcoming episode.
Why can't Ted Lasso, not that this is like the pinnacle of television, but like they can't take a plays from Cobra Kai, which is like, hey, we found a formula that works. We're going to stick to that formula. We're going to innovate in fun ways, but we're going to more or less stick to this core formula that works.
It makes you wonder. I'm not even trying to point fingers. I don't know if it's a Bill Lawrence thing or a Jason Sudeikis thing or what, but season 3 in particular took a long time to reach fruition, and it sounded like there was a lot of reshoots and changes at the last minute. It makes you wonder, were there too many voices in the room? Who won out? What vision was there? Because it does seem like a bit of a convoluted mess.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because I love season 1. It's going to go down in history as one of my favorite TV seasons.
Yeah, season 1 was great. But they had a good focus, and you still got female friendships and like a diverse, like all this great important stuff, but it was like focused, and it's just everywhere. And I'm talking a lot for not having seen it. This is just all I've read. We will give a review and at this point, I read the bad reviews and I was like, maybe I don't want to watch it. I was like, no, you know what? All we do on the show, because we value our time, is review things that end up being good. It would be good to have something that maybe is controversial, and then we can give our 2 cents. Yeah.
But that's like the one example.
That was a fluke.
We haven't given much else below a 5 in the history of this show.
We were not very up on Pokemon either, but I think we were expecting to hopefully still like it. And
what did we end up giving that?
Not very. You gave it the lowest.
I did, but it was still like a 6, and you gave it up to a 7, I think.
I think overall it was a high 6 or a low 7.
Yeah. So I mean, even then, that's not terrible. No. I guess we are IGN after all. I don't know if you saw IGN's thing that was going around today.
Oh God.
They explained why they give games a 7, and their reasoning was really fucking bad.
Well, please explain. I did not hear this.
I didn't watch the clip itself, so this is paraphrasing. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. I'm a journalist. I'm supposed to be better than this. But it was essentially, we're only going to review things that are popular, because if no one's paying attention to it, then what's the point? Which kind of makes sense. I get it, even though you're a valuable platform for casting light on things like that, like smaller indie projects, but fine. And then we just kind of default towards a 7 because then nobody's that upset. Which, I mean, I'm not surprised to hear was the case, but to say it out loud, it's kind of like, well, do you just not respect your readers that much? Like, what are you doing
Sometimes
here?
IGN, they get a bad rap, and then they go and make it so much worse by shit like this, like by engaging in a really dumb way.
Yeah, just don't say that.
Just don't.
You can even say, like, look, I mean, we review a ton of stuff. We can't review everything. There's way too many games that come out a year. Like they mentioned, like something like 11,000 games came out on Steam last year, and obviously that includes major AAA releases and also the tiniest indie games with one developer. But then you could even talk about how, like, the bell curve, of course more things are going to be like a 7 or 8, right? Because you just don't have 10s or 2s that often. But instead, it's like, yeah, we don't fucking know. We just put a 7 on it.
They're so fucking stupid. So they only do a 10-point scale now, right? It's not 20. It's not.
I believe they've gone back to single digits, but who knows? They flip it every 5 years.
The point is, like, plenty of like readers went on comments and were like, yeah, the reason there's so many 7s and 8s is like when you're reviewing a game, that's the kind of the most likely number you're going to fall on that scale. Like most games are not going to be a masterpiece. They're also probably not going to be like 6 or below. Most commonly, they're going to be in the 7 or 8. And then IGN comes out and is like, yeah, that's good reasoning. Really, though? We just slap it on there because we don't care.
Yeah.
But
what?
The problem is that then you're really only rating on like a 4-point scale. If everything's a 7 minimum, well, then you've got 7, 8, 9, or 10. That's it.
Well, but that's why you don't fucking say it. Because then, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but like most games that they're going to review, and they, most popular, I would even say like, most games that are going to be released to the general masses are going to be within that like 6 to 10 range. Otherwise, it's like someone did a one-off indie game on Steam and it was awful. And they're like, why would we waste our time with that? 5 people are going to play it. It wasn't even ready to be released. Although like Redfall is a great example of like probably worse than a 6. And it was a AAA game.
Whoops.
We'll get into that. Actually, do we have time? Can I just get into Redfall really quick?
I don't think second half started yet.
I don't know if there's been a more disappointing game that has been released than Redfall. I was so excited for this game. Developers of some of my favorite games ever, Deathloop, Dishonored, Prey, doing a co-op like Left 4 Dead meets Dishonored meets like Far Cry. How can that not be good? And they're just like, yeah, apparently we didn't care. The AI is bland. The environments, they took no effort. The gameplay is mostly bad. Every once in a while is okay. The missions are about as bland as you can imagine in a video game. Empty environments. How a AAA game that Xbox is so reliant on to... We're at the point now where are we going to have an Xbox next gen? It's starting to look a little iffy. If Starfall is a bomb, which I would have said is impossible, but then I look at Redfall, and that's a huge bomb, are we going to have a next-gen Xbox? I think it's a valid question at this point.
Well, and for someone who's been a PlayStation fan my entire life, I sure hope there is an Xbox next generation because you need competition to keep things
I agree.
good.
And I like my Xbox. And like my friends and I, we game on Xbox. We enjoy it. But if they're going to have I enjoyed Halo Infinite. Most people were pissed off about Halo Infinite. So you have Halo was a bust. Gears of War 5, a lot of people didn't like the new direction. Plus, it's been on hiatus forever.
Yes, that's a long time ago now.
Redfall. There's no exclusives, and the ones that we get are mediocre or bad. What reason do most people have for getting an Xbox anymore? Most games I get now, I do get on the PS5 for haptics. Honestly, that's like the big difference for me is graphically, I'm not like a huge graphic whore. To me, both systems look pretty similar. Speed, capacity, all of that is pretty similar. The controller feels really good, and I get like a little bit of cool haptic feedback, and that's enough.
Doug said,
Sean likes when the controller goes buzz.
Yeah.
In very specific ways.
Doug says Redfall dropped from 2K active users to a little over 100 in a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, you always expect a little bit of attrition. The game launches, it has all the hype, and then eventually some players fall off for different reasons. But that's not attrition. That's plummeting.
Yeah.
So we'll see if they can pull that out. The Cyberpunk taught us that if you have a disastrous launch, it's real difficult to come back from. Even if you do eventually make good on the things you promised overall, at that point, too many players may not care anymore.
There are signs that they are moving on to their next game. So we're not even... It's seeming like we're not even going to get a No Man's Sky or Cyberpunk situation. We're just... they just dropped a bomb and they're going to abandon it, which I can't imagine bodes well for whatever next project they have.
Correct. Both internally and also in the trust of the consumer.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, so a little bit of a hodgepodge, but we talked primarily about Suns because we're still in the thick of the playoff run. Maybe we still will be next week, but either way, we're not going to be on the air. So programming note, no show next week. I'm going to be on vacation. Sean will be with me. We will be partying. You can't rob our house, though. People will still be here.
Yes.
So just let's be very clear about that.
Yep.
But no show next week. We'll be back on May 23rd with an episode. Could be about the Suns in the Western Conference Finals. Could be a Suns memoriam. Could be something else entirely. There's also a trivia show coming up sometime soon. So we'll see what happens when we come back from a short hiatus. I can't really call it that when it's 1 week. But in any case, in between episodes, you can find us at objectionnetwork.com or youtube.com/objectionnetwork, where our top 25 Zelda songs will continue, even though we're not having a show next week. We'll see you next time.